Namaskar, you are watching eVidya channels and NCERT's official YouTube channel, and this is our much awaited session. As you are already aware, we are celebrating Cyber Jaagrookta Diwas. So today is the day 4 of this series of this month, Cyber Jaagrookta Diwas, and we are going to discuss about ethics, e-commerce and banking transactions. So this is the topic of today's discussion in Cyber Jaagrookta Diwas. This special series organized by CIET NCERT in collaborations with ISEA CDEC. As you already know that we have so many sessions. You can watch all the previous sessions online on our YouTube channel. So let's begin this much awaited session, but before we begin, I would like to share the message of G20. We are proud that India assumed the G20 presidency and will convene the G20 Leaders Summit for the first time in the country in 2023. A nation deeply committed to the democracy and multilateralism, India's G20 presidency would be a watershed moment in the history as it seeks to play an important role by finding the pragmatic global solutions for the well-being of all, and in doing so manifest the true spirit of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So this is the positive message of G20, and with this we are here to start this session. You can also be a part of this live interactive session. You may dial 8800440559 is the number. So let's begin this session. We have our guest Mr. Vamshi Krishna Palakurthi from CDEC. Sir, namaskar and a very warm welcome in the session.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Welcome in this session. Sir is from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Those who are looking after this important aspect of our life, because we live in this e-era, electronic, we are talking about the digital India, digital literacy. So this is at the important part of our life nowadays, as we do online shopping, we do banking transactions. Most of the time we get notifications over the phone regarding our package, is delivered, is out for delivery, or maybe any kind of bank transactions. So sir, how would you like to start this session and introduce to the audience?
Good evening all. This is Vamshi Krishna Palakurthi. Actually, I am presently working as Joint Director at CDEC Hyderabad, and I got almost more than 16 plus years of experience, and I did my BTech from JNTU Hyderabad and Masters from Delhi College of Engineering. Now it is Delhi Technological University. So we have been associated with ICR and Stay Safe Online campaign, which has been initiated as part of this India's G20 presidency. Now today I'll be discussing more on the ethics, particularly with respect to e-commerce and the banking transactions. Okay, now I'll start with the three keywords. Okay, I think my screen is visible to all, I guess.
Yes, sir. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, fine. So now you can see that my topic is ethics, e-commerce and banking transactions. Now, if you really can observe, okay, there are three keywords over here. Okay, and that is, one is ethics, the second one is e-commerce, and the third one is the banking transactions. Okay, if somebody asks you about what is really ethics, okay, now if you want to explain it in plain words, one can really say that it is the behavior of any human being, okay, and who has got some principle, morals, okay, and values, okay, which really guide the behavior of the human being. Now, why we are talking about ethics? Okay, what is the point in talking about ethics with respect to e-commerce and banking transaction? Because nowadays everybody using the digital space. Okay, now again the point comes is, what is really digital space? Digital space is nothing but whatever you use or whatever you transact, anything and everything over internet, okay, can be termed as the digital space. Now, things have become so familiar and very common that anybody and everybody is holding a smartphone in his hand.
Right.
From a rickshaw puller to a business magnate.
Right.
So, in on those lines, if you look at the coverage of the people who are using the digital space through their smartphones, and they are doing transactions online, okay, and they are shopping online, they are doing transactions online and booking tickets, what not, everything is being done now. So everything related to online shopping using the cyberspace or the digital space or internet is termed as e-commerce. Now e-commerce has got many stakeholders, okay, it's not that it is limited to some particular one stakeholder. It has got multiple stakeholders. The customers definitely, without the customers, they cannot be a business, and equally the suppliers. Now the suppliers and the customers, they transact on a common platform which is connected through internet. Now, coming to the banking transactions, since the India's initiative has been, motivated, with the digital India concept, and the initiative of the government of India is also working on those lines, and hence everybody is being encouraged to make the transactions online, and those are all banking transactions. So now I think before we get into the topics, everybody should be having an idea on what is ethics and
Right.
what is e-commerce and what are banking transactions.
Right, sir.
Now, why ethics with respect to e-commerce and banking transactions is,
Hmm.
as a common man's behavior, we can define the ethics.
Hmm.
But when it comes to using the digital space,
Hmm.
and that too while making transactions or while buying something over internet in the digital space, okay, the ethics really matter.
Hmm.
Now, with the introduction, okay, let's get into the topic ethics, e-commerce, and the banking transaction.
Okay.
So this is the outline of today's lecture. Now we initially will start with the ethics and its importance. Already has given some brief intro about the ethics. Now we'll discuss about the importance also equally, and what are the challenges involved, okay, in implementing, okay, or in following the ethical practices. Okay, we'll discuss about that, and what sort of strategies are supposed to be employed or deployed, okay, to look into the actual implementation is about strategies. And since the whole world is moving into the digital space completely, and they are working on those lines, we'll also try to understand the role of technology in e-commerce as well as the banking transactions, and thereafter we'll discuss about the rights of the customers. Here rights and responsibilities have been made together only to make sure that to understand who are the stakeholders, and what are the rights of those stakeholders, and what are the responsibilities of the companies which are involved in all these things. Here if it comes to rights, okay, the consumers are the stakeholders, we'll talk about the consumer rights. And when it comes to responsibilities, we'll talk about the responsibility of the companies, okay, which are very much part of this e-commerce websites and all. Next, coming to the next part is that the regulatory requirements. So there needs to be some regulation on whatever the business which is happening in the digital space. If at all we don't have any control or any regulatory mechanism in place, okay, now the whatever which is being displayed in the e-commerce site may not be the original thing which you place an order and you will receive something else. Now, if there is no regulation in what you have ordered and what has been reached out to you, okay, definitely there will be no one to no one accountable or no one to answer. So you don't even have anything to ask anybody. Whatever you receive, you will have to accept blindly. So now we discuss in detail about the regulatory requirements, and we'll take some case studies, because in the recent past, okay, there have been many incidents, okay, which without practicing the ethics, okay, most probably you can say the unethical practices led to some of the major scams. We'll take up only two of them as a case study, and thereafter we'll try to discuss what is the way forward. Like if at all there are any gaps in the existing technologies, or in the things which have been followed. Okay, we'll try to work out and see how those things can be improved. Okay, now moving on to the next slides. It's already mentioned ethics and its importance. Now, for a definition, from a definition point of view, you can see that ethics is a branch of philosophy which deals with moral principles and values that guide human behavior. Now, you can see everybody needs to understand that what are moral principles and what are values, and why I have specifically mentioned guide, because when somebody talks about ethics, okay, these are the key points wherein without which you cannot discuss anything and everything about ethics. Now, how the ethics are being helpful is that they are guiding the human behavior. Now, why the ethics part has come into guiding the human behavior is that all the e-commerce websites or the companies or the banks, okay, they are all owned by human beings. Maybe there have some different hierarchy. They do have a hierarchy in place. They are at different levels, but ultimately at the end of the day, they are all human beings. Now, if the apex, okay, the top man of the company, okay, if he can be really guided with proper ethics, definitely he will implement the same in the company which he is the CEO or the managing director or whatsoever. So this is how we'll start with, and what are the ethics to be practiced in e-commerce. Particularly when you try to shop online, okay, you will see a product and you will buy it online. So what really needs to be done is you will have to check for the things that, okay, what the product is all about and whether the description has really been given on the product or not, and how the payment is being done, whether the payment which is being done is secure or not, and in case if what of the product we receive, okay, if that is not in good condition or quality, whether there is a clear written policy or not, is there or not, we'll have to check for all these things.
Right.
We do have many ethical practices, okay, which are being followed, okay, but we will restrict ourselves to only some of the things because of the time constraint, we will not be able to discuss all of them.
Right.
So these are the things which are to be in place to be ethical for e-commerce websites. Now coming to the banking transactions. Okay, now if at all we are buying something online, okay, either you have two ways of paying for it. One is you make the online payment. The other one is the cash on delivery mode. Okay, for cash and delivery mode, okay, will not be having much issues as such, since if the product is in your hands, then only you will pay. Okay, that is maybe good practice to do so, but most of the times you are not available, okay, at home, you are at office, or you are busy with something else, or you don't want to get indulged into wasting the time, and also most of the times 80% of them they will go for paying it online. Now when you are paying it online, there comes is that whether whatever the payment you are making online, okay, whether that is being secure or not, okay, that is the major part. And equally, whatever the information which you are sharing with the e-commerce sites, whether that information is being safeguarded, whether it is safe or not, or you will try to see whether there is any conflict of interest, whether that could be from the banking side or from the e-commerce website. Now, why do you really need all these ethics or ethical practices to be deployed in e-commerce and banking sector? Because see, until unless you don't practice all these ethics, okay, there are chances. See, the banking industry and the e-commerce industry, they are completely dependent upon the trust, okay, the customer trust. Without customer trust, okay, you cannot do the business. Now, to make sure that the customer trust is intact, to keep the reputation of the organization on the go, and to garner more and more customers, okay, you need to have some practices in place, and without them we can't do. And okay, overall you can see that the whole of the ethical practices being implemented are resulting to the overall stability and sustainability of the both the sectors. And when it comes to stability and sustainability of this banking sector, because since banking is majorly one of the backbones of the Indian economy, indirectly you can say that this is contributing to the Indian economy as well.
Okay.
Now, yeah, what are the challenges?
Ji.
Okay, see, anybody just speaks about that, okay, we will have to do this, we will have to do that and all. But when it comes to implementation, there are definitely many challenges, okay, which we come across. Now, I have selected few of the challenges, okay, while interacting with the e-commerce sites, while doing transactions with the e-commerce sites. One of them is the data privacy and security. Nowadays, okay, you might have heard about this Facebook very recently during the elections of US presidential elections. Okay, it has been learned that Facebook had given access to much of the information, okay, breaching the data privacy and
Right.
security of many users.
Right, sir.
Now, since once you are breaching with the data privacy and the security of the customers, definitely there are chances that maximum there will be misuse of their data, okay, their privacy and the security. This may lead to the financial loss for some of them. For some of them, it will be the that will cost the reputation. For some of them, it will be, it depends, like, at what position you are in. So you will have to have something in place, okay, to protect the data privacy and the security of the customers. So how do you do that? Okay, now you should have a robust, okay, data privacy and security policies in place. Now, what do you mean by robust data privacy and security policies? See, any organization, okay, before it reaches out to the digital space, they need to have to fulfill some of the requirements with the ministry or with the regulatory organizations which are operating in the country. Now, before getting the approval, once there is a requirement and that requirement is being satisfied and approved by the regulating authorities, then you can be assured of that whatever the data which is being floated on e-commerce sites cannot be resulting into the security breaches. Now coming to the online fraud. What is online fraud? If there these days you can hear that every now and then there is a message reaching out to your mobile asking for all the details and all, by sharing all fake websites and all. So once you click on those links, they'll ask for some data, or they'll say that you have been given some offer, you pay some amount of money. These are all deceiving the customers, okay, in the name of offers, okay, or generally termed as online frauds. So you will have to be very careful. And how do you detect these online frauds? These days, okay, the artificial intelligence has come into place. Okay, now there has been some research ongoing to detect the URLs, whether they are fake URLs or they are genuine URLs or they are any malicious URLs. So now by using the technology, okay, we can detect those things, and that is how we will be able to manage the online frauds. But that is not foolproof, and still you can say that at some point of time, okay, some percentage of things still remain. And next, coming to the supply chain management. So what is actually supply chain management? Here the supply chain management with respect to e-commerce website is that, okay, the path of the product from the manufacturer to the supplier to the distributor to the customer, okay, the life cycle of a generation or production of a product to the reaching out to the customer is the supply chain management. Now there are many issues, because see, somebody places an order for some iPhone, and in the supply chain management, if the supply chain management is not secure enough, and that is not being properly looked into, definitely the product which you will be getting, okay, may not be an iPhone. So that's why there should be some checks and balances to make sure that the whole of the supply chain management, okay, is secure and safe. And how do you do that? Now you will have to discuss with the all the stakeholders who are very much part of the supply chain management, like the distributors or the suppliers or the manufacturers. And at every point there should be some ethics to be followed, and that should be, reaching out to the top level as well as the lowest level, which is the customer. That is how you can manage the supply chain management problem in the e-commerce website. Now we'll look into the challenges in the banking transactions. Okay, what can be the possible challenges in, while making banking transactions online? So majorly the banking sector, okay, is already being regulated. There is no doubt about it, because there are many players. There are private players, public players. Okay, there are some financial institutions, and there are international banks also. Now, what are the ethics which are supposed to be followed by the banks? Now, they should really be responsible while lending the money to the customers, because until unless you don't know the credibility of the customer, okay, and you give the loans to the customers without their credibility, there are chances that that may result in non NPAs. Okay, so non-performing assets. Once that they become a non-performing assets. Okay, you can rest be assured that that amount you are not going to get. And if that is the case, the whole of the money will be blocked as NPA in the days to come, or at any point of time. That may result in the collapse of the banking sector. That's why you will have to have minimal ethics. You'll have to check for the credibility of the customers, and accordingly we'll have to give the loan based on the credibility. Next comes is the transparency in the fees and the charges. Now, what is transparency? Now, whatever the bank charges you, that should be known to you, and the purpose is also should be very much be aware of those things, and that should be the responsibility of the banking sector or the banks, which should make sure that that should be learned by you. And most of the time what happens is, okay, without knowing, okay, there are ATM charges being levied, there are maintenance charges, there are checkbook charges, and that are being not being informed to the customer, and without doing that, okay, they'll charge all the. So now the ethical practices also make sure that the banking operations or the transactions or the banking sector make sure that they should be transparent to the customers. Now coming to the third point, which is money laundering and terrorist financing. This is one of the major threat in the banking sector, and this is a major ethics which are supposed to be followed while going for any huge amount transactions or any huge amount withdrawals, because in many of the cases, okay, I think the demonetization, okay, which has been happened in 2016 or 17 I suppose. So that was because to stop this terroristic financing in one or the other way. Now for these things, okay, the banking sector or the bank should be aware of what are all the transactions happening on a daily basis, and they'll have to have a mechanism in place to see whether there are any huge transactions happening within the bank or between the banks or anything as such, and that should be brought out to the regulatory bodies, so that the regulatory bodies can have an eye on those transactions to see whether that money which has been transferred being utilized for a good cause or for a terroristic financing or something like that. So now, how do you go about these things, and what is the remedy? The remedy is very clear. whatever the regulatory bodies you have in place, particularly the RBI, Act, Reserve Bank of India Act, which have come into existence in 1934. Then there have been some amendments. These banks, through this act, okay, the regulatory bodies will have a checks and balances on the banking transactions, and that is how these can be controlled and that can be overcome. Now, what are the strategies? Now comes is that we have talked about all the problems that this can be, the possible issue, this can be the possible issue and all. But ultimately, what are we coming out with? Okay, what is more important is that we are equally coming out with the strategies. So, what are the strategies? Okay, the strategies are particularly, okay, how do we implement the whole of the thing, and what is the mechanism in place, okay, which can be implemented to overcome all the challenges, okay, and how do you make sure that whatever the policy which is in place is being effectively implemented. Now you can see one of the things is develop a code of ethics. So what do you mean by develop a code of ethics? Now, in any of the organization, whether it's a e-commerce organization or it's a banking sector, okay, you need to have some sort of values or ethical principles in place, which should be passed on to all the employees to make sure that they understand what is ethical and what is unethical. Once somebody comes to understand what is ethical and unethical, they can even inform to the higher authorities if something is unethical going on. Now provide training and education. So this is the second part wherein you will train and educate the people from time to time to make sure that, since some of the things may get changed from time to time, based on that time, okay, you can also improve upon or train the employees or educate the employees to make sure that to understand what is ethical. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what the strategies speak is that people should understand, okay, the human beings, the people who are behind the screens, who are working in and out, they should understand what is ethics and what is ethical and what is unethical. I think that is the whole thing which has been mentioned, and implement robust compliance programs. So very much in line with the training program, we'll have to see that whatever we have mentioned in the past, whether that is being properly implemented and compliant with the existing rule of the law or the law of the land. Okay, and encourage transparency. We should make sure that whatever being implemented, okay, and that implementation should also be known to the customers. It's not that I am doing from my side and the customer doesn't even understand what is really happening.
Right.
And foster the culture of ethics. Now this is very much important these days, because initially it used to be IQ, now it has come to EQ. So similar way, by fostering a culture of ethics within the organization, you will make sure to identify who is following the ethics, and you reward those people with, you reward them so that they really can be encouraged, and the other employees can also look into that, whether what is really ethical and unethical in the organization. They will complain about the unethical issues if something comes out. And these strategies really can improve the responsible behavior, and they can trust the relationship with the stakeholders. The stakeholders are nothing but again the more or less customers in with respect to banking. When it comes to e-commerce sites, it will be the suppliers, manufacturers, and the distributors, and so on and so forth. So now comes is the role of technology. What is the role of technology in making sure that these sectors really follow the ethics? One of the major things is the blockchain technology. Everybody must have heard about the blockchain technology. This is the latest emerging technology, wherein with the implementation of the blockchain technology, with the introduction of the blockchain technology into these sectors, will really make all the transactions very secure and safe, and equally develop the trust among the customers, so that the customers who are reaching out to the digital space will definitely increase. And how we do that? Okay, there is some immutable technology within blockchain. Okay, I think that will take another session if we go on. So we'll not get into much of the details.
Okay.
Ultimately, we can say that with the blockchain technology, we can make all the transactions very, very secure. There will be no option left out for tampering any of the things. Now coming to the artificial intelligence. So everybody speaks about artificial intelligence these days. Though artificial intelligence has been, heard about for the past 30 years, but these days the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, deep learning, they have really gained prominence only because initially we never had any hardware setup to manage the data which has been generated as part of this artificial intelligence implementation or to train any of the systems. Now we do have a hardware in place by which we can really train any of the systems based on this artificial algorithms, artificial intelligence. So this also plays an important role in promoting the transparency, the fairness, and everything in these e-commerce and banking transactions. Now coming to data analytics have not much to do with this, but okay, to some extent they can really play an important role because based on the previous history, okay, they'll check for with the customers and the e-commerce websites and all, and based on that data analytics or data analysis, they will refer or they will suggest you something wherein you can really go ahead with the things. Now mobile and digital payments. So everybody does know that ever since the government of India has planned for this major projects like Digital India and all. So slowly and steadily, we are moving on to paperless payments. Okay, and with the recent statistic, it has been learned almost 60 to 70% of the transactions are being done online, and even the UPI payments gateway and all, we are even providing services to other countries also. That's a great achievement as such. Okay, and now when we talk about technology and its intervention, we should also look into the risks associated with those technologies. Now, what is the first risk which is associated with the introduction of these technologies? Cyber security risk. So whatever the risks we have been talking about, that stealing of our data, okay, and stealing of our critical information like banking online passwords or usernames, okay, they all come under cyber security risk because see, once these technologies are in place, okay, it's opening up the gates for all the hackers and all to make sure that they'll try to include into the all these technologies, or but through technologies they can reach out to the websites and they can steal the data, they can use the data, they can misuse the data. There are many things happening. Data privacy risks is also one of the other things, wherein here our information will be stolen, that will be used or misused, or that may be disclosed, and nobody really wants to do so, because if you look at the social media platforms like Facebook and all, anybody and everybody shares the information publicly, and at times that results in the privacy issues. Okay, and those similar images of the persons, they are being collected and they are being shared more. There are many issues associated, so should be very careful while using the social media platforms, and you should always have something in your mind that you should make sure that everything should not be made public. And this is all because of the technology. If at all the internet speeds are not much, nobody would have really accessed the social media platforms. Okay, so that's why as the technology increases, okay, the risks associated with those technologies will also increase, and we should have some mechanism in place. And anyhow, the measures are being taken and being worked out to make sure that we avoid or overcome all the risks. And the third one is over reliance on technology. So what happens is that, okay, if you consider one of the examples of a movie which is artificial intelligence, Okay,
Okay.
it speaks about the intervention of the technology, but equally it has mentioned about the risks also. Because when we start depending on more on the technology,
Hmm.
there are chances that the data or the technology which is in place, like artificial intelligence, is there. It might have been associated with multiple platforms, and whatever the data we have with the, that software or the tool, okay, that may misuse the data. So we'll have to be very careful while using and thinking about the technology and all.
Right.
Next, we'll speak about the rights and responsibilities. Okay, now here the rights is all about the customer or the consumer rights. I'll be talking about. Okay, what should have been the customer consumer rights? Okay, while placing an order or while doing any banking transactions, we'll have to work out on what should he really ask for. Okay, one of them is the fair treatment. Fair treatment is that if you look at the banking transactions,
Hmm.
you will see that much of the people may not be aware of the existing technology. Okay, and some of them they'll be getting the whole of the benefit of the online banking.
Right.
So now how will you bridge that gap?
Hmm.
And while bridging that gap, what are the measures you take to make sure that these customers who are unable to avail the online facilities, how do you educate them? That is what is the no the crux of the matter, and that treatment should be given. That is why everybody will look for the fair treatment. And second one is the trust and loyalty. So as
Hmm.
already I have mentioned that the banking sector particularly and the e-commerce sector, they simply run on trust. Okay, if you don't have trust, okay, it's very difficult to run any banking sector. Now, how do you build up the trust? Now you have got some relationship with you have an account with some of the banking side.
Right.
If if somebody can really ensure, okay, that the banking side has some mechanism, security mechanism or privacy mechanism in place, okay, definitely you will go ahead. Initially, in the olden days, it used to be like only HTTP server which used to operate on, and through that server only we used to access the websites, online banking sector websites and all. But now it has got improved. It's a double layer security. Now it has become HTTPS. The additional security layer has come up, and this is how while as per the technology grows, okay, with the requirements needs of the customers, if you build up the security mechanism or some other mechanism in place, we can build up the trust, and we can look for the loyalty from the customers. Now reputation. What is reputation? Reputation is that, okay, whichever the bank or the e-commerce site which holds good its value will have the better reputation. Now, if there might be some issues, there had been some issue in 2008 with respect to Punjab National Bank. That was, we'll discuss that as a case study. It has, given loans to people with all fake documents, and there have been some discrepancies, while submitting documents, and because of that one, it lost his, whole of the reputation. So you need to follow proper ethics, okay, to see that the reputation of the organization, okay, doesn't fall down abruptly. Now, coming to the legal complaints, okay, what are the legal complaints? We'll have to equally, once looking for the ethics and all other practices, okay, whether those ethical practices are legally compliant or not, we'll have to look into all these things. Because see, most of the times, whatever the law of the land we have in India may not be in other countries, because we are also equally operating in some of the banks which are foreign banks. So you need to work out whether they are really legally compliant or not, and accordingly you should go ahead. Empowerment. So what is empowerment? So what is we have discussed in fair treatment, where you can see there are two sets of people. One of them is unable to use the facilities being provided, and the other is excessively using the facilities. Now, what is the gap? The gap. How will you bridge that gap? Okay, you will bridge that gap by empowering them, educating them. Okay, so these are all the major rights of the customers or the consumers, okay, which are supposed to be addressed and which are supposed to be practiced, implemented by the e-commerce and the banking sectors.
Okay.
Next, next coming to the responsibilities. Okay, now we have discussed about the rights. Now, what should have been the responsibilities of the e-commerce companies or the banks? Now, first is that the major thing, okay, which which is really creating so much of noise these days is protecting customer data. As already I have explained the example of Facebook, okay,
Right.
which they have leaked out the customer data to uh, US during the US presidential election. That has created so much of havoc. And okay, you need to see while interacting or while transacting, while doing any sort of transactions, should make sure that the data is being properly secured or not, and that is the responsibility of the organization, and that responsibility has to be approved by the regulatory bodies. Now, fair pricing and fees. Now, what is fair pricing? Now, some of the banks, okay, charge too much for your ATM transactions. Some of them charge comparatively less. Okay, now there should be some mechanism in place where each and every bank should define, okay, and that defined amount only should be charged based on the regulations which have been in place. So now, responsible lending and investment. What is responsible lending? Okay, responsible lending is nothing but, okay, based on the credibility. Okay, based on the credibility of each and every customer or the company or anything else. Okay, you need to lend them based on the credibility, and that should be, after this Nirav Modi scam and the other scams, okay, which have come up in 2018 and so there have been some regulations, there have been some amendments made. Okay, we'll discuss more about those regulations and all. Okay, so you will have to be very responsible while lending to anybody and everybody. Now, responsible supply chain management. Okay, since the whole of the supply chain management is very much part of e-commerce companies. E-commerce companies should make sure that they discuss with all the stakeholders which are very much part of the supply chain management, and make sure that the ethics should be followed so that everything would be smooth at the end of the day. Consumer education. So some of the people, they are not empowered. As we have discussed the rights of the customers. Okay. Now it also equally falls on the part of companies. They need to educate from time to time, because there is a change in the technology from time to time. Based on the technology, anybody may not be aware of it. So it is the responsibility. This is also one of the ethics to be followed by e-commerce companies or the banking banking sectors, okay, which really need to educate the customers to make sure that everything will be fine, so that they can build the trust, and with their customers they can claim the reputation, or they can increase the reputation of the company also. Now coming to the actual part, which is the regulatory requirements. Okay, now how we have discussed so much about all of the things. Now the major point comes is that how do you regulate all these things? Okay, now we have now some bills which have been passed, and we have got some acts, okay, which are really indeed, okay, regulating the whole of the e-commerce websites and the bank sector. Now let's discuss point by one. Now this data protection regulations bill, actually this is being tabled, okay, and this is yet to become an act, and this is all about personal data protection. Because of the recent developments happening in the past, okay, which has really created so much havoc, and even today also I can say for sure everybody's data, okay, is being made can be made public at any point of time. Because when you install any app also, you will see that it will ask for accessing your contacts, okay, it will ask for accessing your media files, it will ask for accessing your videos. So we simply and blindly simply go on selecting okay, 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 and going to next and next to install any app. So this is how knowingly or unknowingly we are providing the data and we are sharing the data with all the third party fellows. So you need to be very careful while using all these things in the digital space. And this data protection regulations bill, okay, PDB, personal data protection bill, which really looks into the data privacy and the security of our personal data. And it is yet to be implemented. This is under debate. I think more or less by the end of this year, it is expected that it will come up as an act. Now, Reserve Bank of India Regulations Act. Okay, actually the Reserve Bank of India Regulations Act, which was initiated in 1934. Okay, and there have been some amendments in after 1949. It speaks about how the banking sector should operate. Okay, how it should be made transparent, how it should be charging fair prices. Okay, so it speaks about all the banking sector and the regulations which are supposed to be followed by all the banks. Okay, while interacting or while making online transactions, and it covers all the aspects from transactions to the customers. Now the Consumer Protection Act 1986. So this Consumer Protection Act speaks about all the rights of the consumers. Okay, and it also speaks about the measures to be taken by the e-commerce sites so that the customer will not be cheated, and whatever the process which is happening, that should be fair enough and equally that should be transparent enough. Okay, and coming to the Information Technology Act, it also more or less speaks about the rights of the consumers, but equally it emphasizes on the crimes also. Okay, some of the e-commerce sites, okay, maybe claiming something else as offers, and in return they extract money, and there are some cheating happening online. So this Information Technology Act covers all those aspects. Okay, and this has this has been amended initially in 2000, but amended in 2009 also. So there are some more changes supposed to be happening with that. Now coming to the goods and services tax, it's majorly concerned about the consumer this e-commerce companies, because every purchase we made online, okay, not only online, all the purchases which has been made, they are being charged with GST and all. Now this, through this act, the government of India makes sure that whatever the tax being collected from us is being paid, or whether GST number is available with the commerce sites or not, whether they are filing the GST. This act speaks about all those aspects, and this is how the government of India has come up with all these bills from time to time. Okay, amended these things to control and regulate these e-commerce sites and the banking sector. Now the case studies. Okay, you can see the case study. This has happened in 2018 because of the unethical practices, and because of the employees compromised, with their ethics. Okay, and they had issued so much of loans, or they have given credit clearance certificates. Okay, so that one of the companies owned by Nirav Modi has gained so much of benefits, and overall it has a quite havoc, and it created a loss of around about 1 billion rupees for the bank, and the bank also lost its reputation. And this is where actually the ethics really come into place. Okay, if you don't have or don't practice proper ethics, this is PNB, Punjab National Bank, which used to be one of the India's largest bank. Now nobody cares about that. So that's why the ethics are very, very important, and the practices are equally important, and that is how we can build up the trust and increase the customers. Okay, so you need to be very careful while doing so. And this next comes is the Airtel's data protection violation. Okay, this also in 2008 happened in 18 itself. okay, where the data have been shared, or the data has been shared by the employees, and they have created some banking accounts, and they started issuing SIM cards without their consent. So this is one of the major security breach and the privacy violations of the customer. So you need to be very careful
Right.
on how you handle your personal data, and equally whenever you apply for something else, you should mention while sharing Aadhaar card details or anything else, you should mention about that this, the purpose of the photocopy, the Xerox copy is this one, and you
Right.
sign it so that that may not be used for any other purposes.
Right. Right.
These are the one of the two case studies which I thought that will be very much relevant and beneficiary
Right. Right.
to all of the audience.
Sir, we have a question for you.
Yes, please, Rahul.
Muinuddin Naeem sent a message that can we ensure that personal and financial information is protected during online banking transaction, and what steps can individuals and organizations take to prevent data breaches and cyber attacks?
No, see, actually, whatever we have been discussing so far, okay, we need to make sure that the regulatory bodies which we discussed about, okay, they should have some policies in place, okay, and those policies, they'll have to make sure that those policies are being equally implemented, at the organization level.
Right.
It's not that they will simply, say that these things should be present, okay, and rest they'll not take care. That should not have happened, because once the regulatory organ or the
Right.
regulatory body,
Right,
okay, which permits somebody or some e-commerce site or the
Right.
bank, then nobody will care. So that's why we should have some stringent guidelines and policies in place, okay, which will really ensure that the data safety and security of the customers
Right.
should be of utmost importance.
Right. Right.
And that can be implemented based on the policies only. There is no other mechanism in place.
Right, and I would like to add one point here, sir, on behalf of all the stakeholders and the audience, that there is only one easy step that we should be aware all about this transactions and online world. I think this would be the best therapy, to save ourselves from these type of frauds or maybe data breaches, right?
Yeah, yes, obviously.
So that we may also help the system, those who are trying to protect us and trying to protect our data, trying to protect our money and all our transactions, assets, everything. Sir, I have no more time actually. This is really wonderful and interesting session for all of us. Thank you very much, sir, for making this presentation very crisp, very interesting and very helpful for all the audiences, those who are connected with us on televisions, on YouTube channel of NCERT's official YouTube channel. So, Vamshi sir, thank you very much for your time and all the very best for all your future endeavors and to your entire team.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, fine, right.
Fine, sir. Thank you very much. So, dear audience, we are here to conclude this session, but before we begin, before we conclude this session, would like to share the message of G20. We are proud that India assumed the G20 presidency and will convene the G20 Leaders Summit for the first time in the country in 2023. A nation deeply committed to the democracy and multilateralism, India's G20 presidency would be a watershed moment in the history, as it seeks to play an important role by finding the pragmatic global solutions for the well-being of all, and in doing so manifest the true spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world is one family. So, we are here now concluding this Cyber Jaagrookta Diwas. It was a day 4 of this webinar series in which we have discussed ethics, e-commerce and banking transactions. So, stay tuned for the next presentation of Sahyog, in which we talk about mental wellness and mental well-being of our adolescents. So, stay tuned, keep watching. Namaskar.